Ethan's heart raced as he wandered deeper into the ruins of the ancient planet. The air was thick with dust, and the only sounds were the distant hums of his ship and the crunch of his boots against the broken ground. He had heard rumors of this place, a hidden world long forgotten by history, with artifacts that could change lives. As an explorer, he was drawn to the mysteries of the galaxy, and this was the perfect opportunity to discover something truly incredible. He had no idea what lay ahead, but his curiosity drove him forward. He stepped carefully through the crumbling walls of what appeared to be an ancient temple, the faint glow of his flashlight reflecting off intricate carvings. As he moved deeper, the walls seemed to whisper with a forgotten history, calling to him. Ethan paused in front of a strange glowing pedestal. At its center rested a small, ornate box, an artifact unlike anything he had ever seen. Its surface shimmered with an otherworldly light, and its intricate design seemed to pulse with life. He knelt down, his breath shallow as he examined it. There were no markings, no symbols that he could understand, but something about it felt powerful. He hesitated for only a moment before reaching out and opening the box. The moment his fingers touched it, the air around him grew heavy. A strange wind began to swirl, and the ground trembled beneath his feet. Ethan stepped back in shock, his heart pounding. The light from the box flared bright, blinding him for a brief moment. When his vision cleared, a figure stood before him, a woman, glowing with an ethereal light, her beauty otherworldly. Her eyes shimmered like stars, and her long, dark hair seemed to float around her, as though it had a life of its own. She wore flowing robes, their colors shifting like the sky at twilight. There was no mistaking it. This was no ordinary woman. Ethan's mouth went dry. Was she human? No, she was something more, much more. The woman gazed at him with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. She tilted her head slightly, as if trying to understand who or what he was. I don't understand, Ethan said, his voice hoarse. Who are you? The woman smiled, a soft, knowing smile that seemed to hold centuries of wisdom and secrets. I am Azira, a being of the stars, bound to this place for eternity. And now you have freed me. Ethan's mind raced. A genie? He had heard stories, myths from ancient cultures, but he never imagined they could be real. Yet here she was standing before him. The truth was undeniable, and it sent a chill down his spine. I freed you? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Azira nodded, her smile widening. Yes, mortal. You have unlocked the ancient artifact that bound me to this world. Now I am yours to command. I will grant you 3 wishes, as is the custom of my kind. Ethan blinked, still struggling to comprehend what was happening. This was beyond anything he had ever imagined. The stories were true. The ancient myths, the tales of genies who could grant wishes, and now he was standing before one. His mind spun with possibilities, wealth, power, endless knowledge. The things he could ask for were limitless, but as he looked at Azira, something inside him shifted. It wasn't the power or riches that fascinated him. It was her, the mystery of her existence, the fact that she was real. Ethan hesitated, not sure how to phrase it. I want to see your true form. I want to see who you really are. Azira's expression faltered for a moment, and Ethan noticed the flicker of surprise in her eyes. My true form? She repeated softly. Yes, Ethan said, his voice steady now, though his heart raced. I want to see you, not just the magic or the power. I want to see you as you truly are.
Azira regarded him for a long moment, her gaze intense.
Ethan felt a strange pull, as though she was searching his very soul. Finally, she nodded, and with a flick of her wrist, the air around her shimmered and rippled. Before his eyes, her appearance began to change. Her glowing robes shifted, swirling into a more solid form. Her skin became a deeper shade of gold, radiant and glowing softly. Her long hair, once dark and floating, now cascaded like molten silver down her back. And her eyes became like twin galaxies, swirling with the vastness of the universe. Ethan took a step back, stunned by the sheer beauty of her transformation. He had seen nothing like it in his entire life. Her form was like a vision from the stars themselves, both terrifying and mesmerizing. She was no longer just a genie. She was something greater, something beyond comprehension. Yet, even in this powerful form, there was a gentleness in her gaze that took him by surprise. Azira smiled again, this time with a hint of amusement. "This is who I truly am, mortal, a being of the stars, bound by an ancient curse. But now, you have seen me as I am. What is your first wish?" Ethan stood there, speechless, as his mind raced. He had wanted to know her true form, but now that he had seen it, the enormity of the moment hit him. This wasn't just a genie. She was a cosmic being, a force of nature, and he had just asked to see her true self. What could he possibly ask for now? Ethan began, his voice shaking slightly. "I don't know what to wish for." Azira's smile softened. "Take your time, mortal. You have all the time in the world. I am bound to you now, and your wishes will shape our destiny." Ethan nodded slowly, still in awe of the being before him. But as he stood there, watching her, a thought began to form in his mind. This wasn't just about wishes. This wasn't about asking for things. It was about understanding. It was about seeing beyond what was visible. And as he looked into Azira's eyes, he knew what he wanted. He didn't want wealth. He didn't want power. He wanted something deeper, something that could change everything. "I wish," Ethan began, taking a deep breath, "I wish to understand, to see the world as others do, to understand their thoughts, their emotions, their fears." Azira's eyes widened in surprise. This was not what she had expected. Most humans, when faced with the power to wish, asked for glory, for fame, for riches. But Ethan's wish was different. It was selfless, profound, and unexpected. Azira had never encountered a human like him before. The air around them grew heavy with magic. Azira raised her hands, and the energy in the room swirled around them both. A soft light surrounded Ethan. And for the first time, he felt a connection to something far greater than himself. The world around him began to shift, and he understood. He could feel the thoughts of those around him, their hopes, their dreams, their fears. He felt the pain of the universe, the joy, and the sorrow. He saw the world not just with his eyes, but with his heart. Azira stood still, watching him closely. She could see the change in him, the shift that had occurred. Ethan was no longer just a human. He had opened his mind to something far more profound. He was connected to the universe in a way no one else ever had been. And Azira was left stunned, not by the power of his wish, but by the depth of his soul. As the light faded, Ethan stood there, breathless, as the world around him seemed to hum with new life. He had no idea what this would mean, but he knew one thing for certain. His journey with Azira had just begun. And it would be unlike anything either of them could have imagined. Ethan stood still, his mind racing as the world around him seemed to shift. The magic of Azira's power was still alive in the air, a buzzing energy that felt like it was thrumming through his veins. He could feel the emotions of the planet, the winds, the distant stars, even the smallest creatures that lived beneath the surface. He had asked for the ability to understand, but nothing had prepared him for this feeling. It was overwhelming, beautiful, and yet unsettling. He turned to Azira, who was still standing before him, watching with an unreadable expression. Her eyes, now more than ever, seemed to hold the weight of the universe. They were deep, full of ancient knowledge. and yet there was a flicker of something new in them, something different. It was as if she had seen something in him she hadn't expected. Azira's voice broke through his thoughts. You have made a powerful wish, Ethan. You now understand the world in a way few ever will. Ethan nodded slowly, his heart still pounding in his chest. I didn't expect it to feel this intense, he confessed. It's like I can hear everyone's thoughts, see everything they feel. Azira's gaze softened as she stepped closer. It is a gift and a burden. Most would use such power for their own gain. You, however, have chosen to use it to understand others. She paused. That is rare. I didn't want to hurt anyone with my wishes, Ethan said quietly. I wanted to connect. I wanted to understand. Azira tilted her head, considering his words. You are different from the others who have freed me. Most wish for wealth, power, or control. But you, Ethan, you have chosen the path of understanding. Ethan looked down at the ground, feeling the weight of her words. Is that a good thing? He asked, unsure of himself. Azira smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. It is neither good nor bad. It is simply a path. But you have chosen it, and now you must walk it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Ethan was lost in the waves of emotions and thoughts he could feel from the world around him. He could sense the sadness of the trees, the quiet joy of the birds in the distance, and even the fear of the insects beneath the ground. Everything was alive with emotion, and it was all connected. He felt as though he was standing in the middle of a vast, living network. The universe itself seemed to be speaking to him. Finally, Ethan looked up at Azira. What happens now? I've made my first wish. But I don't know what to do with this ability. Azira regarded him carefully. Now, you learn. You learn to use your gift wisely. And you learn to control it. It will not always be easy. Understanding the feelings of others is a heavy responsibility. You will see things you wish you hadn't. You will feel their pain, their sorrow, and their darkest secrets. Not everyone is kind, Ethan. Not everyone has good intentions. Ethan swallowed hard at the thought. He had always believed in the goodness of people, but now that he could feel their emotions, he wondered how many were hiding their true selves. How many were pretending to be something they were not? The weight of this new knowledge was pressing on him, but he didn't want to turn back. He wanted to learn, to grow, to help others with the understanding he now had. Is there a way to block it out? Ethan asked, his voice tight. To turn it off? When it gets too much? Azira shook her head. Once you have opened your mind to the world in this way, there is no easy way to close it again. You can learn to control it, to focus on certain emotions or thoughts, but you will never truly be able to block them out completely. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He wasn't sure if he was ready for this, but he had already made his wish. There was no turning back. The power was his now, and with it came the responsibility. I'll learn to handle it, Ethan said, determination filling his voice. I'll use it to help others, to understand them better. Azira studied him for a moment, her gaze piercing. You are not like the others, she said softly. You have chosen a path that will change the course of your life. But you must be careful. Not everyone will see your gift as a blessing. Ethan nodded. He didn't need Azira to warn him. He had already sensed it. There would be those who would fear him for what he could do. There would be others who might try to use him, to manipulate his abilities for their own gain. But he couldn't let that stop him. He had a mission now. He had a purpose. I don't want to hurt anyone, Ethan said, his voice low. I just want to help. I want to make things better. Azira's eyes softened and she reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. Your intentions are pure, Ethan. But the world is not always kind to those who wish to make it better. Ethan looked at her, a sense of resolve growing inside him. Then I'll fight for it. I'll fight for what's right, even if it's hard, even if it hurts. Azira smiled, a proud smile that was rare for someone like her. You are more than you realize, Ethan. Perhaps you will change the world after all. Ethan felt a spark of hope in his chest. He wasn't sure how or when, but he knew that he had been given a chance to do something extraordinary. He could change the world with his gift. It would take time, patience, and understanding. But he was ready. He was willing. As the days passed, Ethan's understanding of the world deepened. He learned to control his ability to focus on specific emotions and thoughts. He could hear the quiet whisper of a friend's anxiety, the hidden joy of a stranger, the sorrow of someone in pain. It was as if he could see the world through a different lens, one that allowed him to truly understand the people around him. But it wasn't always easy. Sometimes the weight of it all became too much to bear. There were moments when Ethan wanted to block it out, to stop feeling the pain of others. But each time, he reminded himself why he had made this wish. He had chosen the path of understanding, and he would walk it, no matter how difficult. As he continued his journey with Azira, he began to see the cracks in the universe, the flaws in the world, but he also saw the beauty, the love, the hope, the courage that existed even in the darkest corners of the galaxy. And through it all, Azira remained by his side, watching him closely. She had granted his wish, but now she was learning something too. She was learning that there was more to humans than she had ever realized. Ethan's heart, his compassion, his willingness to understand, these were things she had never expected from someone so young. And for the first time in centuries, Azira began to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, a human could change the universe after all. Ethan sat by the edge of a small stream, the soft murmur of the water a soothing sound against the weight in his chest. The forest around him was quiet, except for the occasional chirp of a bird or the rustling of leaves in the gentle breeze. He had learned to find moments of peace in places like this, where the world seemed to slow down and he could think clearly. But today, his thoughts were anything but clear. Ever since he had made his first wish, things had been changing rapidly. The power to understand people's emotions, their deepest thoughts, was a gift, but it came with its own burdens. He could feel their fears, their sadness, their anger, even when they tried to hide it, and sometimes it hurt. Ethan had learned that empathy wasn't just about understanding the good in people. It was also about understanding the darkness. And not everyone wanted to be understood. There were moments when his new ability felt like a curse, a reminder that the world wasn't always kind. He took a deep breath, trying to push the heaviness away. It wasn't easy, but he was determined to make the most of what he had been given. The power to understand others was rare, and he couldn't waste it. "Are you all right, Ethan?" Azira's voice broke through his thoughts, and he turned to see her standing at the edge of the clearing. She looked as ethereal and beautiful as ever, her silver hair flowing in the wind, her eyes glowing softly. Ethan managed a small smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm fine." Just thinking, Azira raised an eyebrow, her gaze sharp as she approached. "You've been thinking a lot lately. Something is troubling you." Ethan sighed, rubbing his hand across his face. "It's just the weight of everything. All the emotions I feel. All the pain. Sometimes it's too much, Azira. I don't know if I can carry it all." Azira sat beside him, her presence calming in its quiet power. She didn't speak at first, simply allowing the silence to settle between them. She had seen the change in Ethan since he had made his first wish. He was no longer the carefree explorer he had been before. The gift of understanding others had transformed him, and it had changed the way he saw the world. "You asked for this gift, Ethan," Azira said softly, her voice gentle but firm. "But you must remember that it is not just a blessing. It is a responsibility. You cannot carry the weight of everyone's pain. You are only human. Ethan looked at her, his eyes dark with doubt. But if I don't, who will? People are hurting, Azira, and I can feel it. I can hear it. I can't just ignore it. Azira studied him, her expression unreadable. And you won't. But you must learn to protect yourself. You cannot save everyone, and you mustn't let their pain consume you. Ethan leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. I don't want to turn away from them. I don't want to become numb. Azira's eyes softened as she placed a hand on his shoulder. You don't have to numb yourself, Ethan, but you must learn how to set boundaries. Understanding others does not mean you must take on their burdens. You must find a way to help without losing yourself in the process. Ethan absorbed her words, feeling their weight. He knew she was right. He couldn't carry the world on his shoulders, but the idea of turning away from people who needed help, it didn't sit right with him. How could he ignore someone's pain when he could feel it so deeply? I'm not sure how to do that, he admitted quietly. How do I help without taking everything on? Azira smiled faintly. It is not an easy path. You will learn, though. You must trust in your own strength and wisdom, and remember that your gift is not just for others, it is also for you. Ethan looked up at her, confused. What do you mean? Azira's gaze softened even further, her eyes reflecting the stars in the sky. Your ability to understand others is a gift, yes, but it is also a way for you to understand yourself. You must learn to see your own heart, Ethan. The pain you feel, the fears you carry, are just as important as the emotions of others. To help others, you must first help yourself. Ethan was silent for a long moment. The idea of looking inward, of confronting his own pain, was something he had never fully considered. He had been so focused on understanding others that he had neglected his own heart. But Azira was right. He couldn't keep giving if he didn't understand himself first. I'll try, he said at last, his voice filled with a quiet resolve. I'll learn to find balance. Azira nodded, a look of approval in her eyes. That is all anyone can do. Balance is the key. They sat together in silence for a while longer, the night stretching out before them. Ethan felt the weight of his emotions, but now it didn't feel as suffocating. Azira's words had given him a new perspective. He didn't have to carry the world on his shoulders. He could still help, still understand. But he needed to take care of himself too. In the days that followed, Ethan began to practice what Azira had told him. He worked on setting boundaries, learning to tune in to the emotions of others without letting them overwhelm him. He found small ways to help, offering comfort to those in need without taking on their pain. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments when the weight of the world felt too much to bear. But with each passing day, he grew stronger. He learned to manage his gift, using it in ways that were both compassionate and wise. Azira watched his progress with quiet pride. She had seen many humans in her long existence, but none quite like Ethan. He was not perfect, no one was, but his heart was pure, and his desire to help was stronger than any power he could have wished for. One evening, as they walked through a meadow filled with wildflowers, Ethan turned to Azira. Do you think I can really change things? He asked, his voice filled with uncertainty. Azira smiled, her eyes sparkling with the same mysterious light that had captivated him from the beginning. I believe you can, she said softly. You are learning, Ethan, and that is the first step. Ethan smiled back, the weight in his chest lighter than it had been in weeks. He didn't have all the answers, and he didn't know what the future would hold. But he was beginning to understand that change didn't have to happen all at once. It could start with small steps, with the quiet acts of kindness that rippled out into the world. And as he walked beside Azira, he felt a sense of peace that had eluded him for so long. He had a purpose now, not just to understand the world, but to help make it a little better, one step at a time. Ethan stood at the edge of a wide, sweeping valley, the wind rustling the tall grass around him. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the landscape, painting the world in soft golds and oranges. It had been weeks since he had made his first wish, and he had come a long way since that day. The world around him no longer felt so overwhelming. The weight of others' emotions, while still present, had become something he could bear. Slowly but surely, he was learning to balance the gift he had been given. Azira stood beside him, her presence a constant reminder of the magical world she had come from. She was quieter now, watching Ethan as he reflected on everything that had happened. There had been moments of doubt, moments where he had questioned whether he was on the right path. But through it all, Azira had been by his side, guiding him, offering wisdom when he needed it most. "You've come a long way, Ethan," Azira said, her voice soft but steady. "You've learned to control the power you have, and you've found a way to help others without losing yourself." Ethan smiled, though it was a tired smile. He had been working hard, trying to help people in small ways. He had helped a village rebuild after a storm, had sat with a grieving widow and listened to her pain, had comforted a child who had lost their way. Each small act had made him feel like he was contributing to something greater, something meaningful. "I couldn't have done it without you," Ethan replied, his voice sincere. "You've been there for me, Azira. I don't know what I would have done without your guidance." Azira nodded, her gaze distant. "I've shown you the path, Ethan, but you've walked it yourself."
"I can't walk it for you."
Ethan turned to face her, studying her face in the fading light. There was something different about her now. She wasn't just the powerful, otherworldly being who had granted him his wish. She had become something more, something real. She had become his guide, his friend, and in many ways, his equal. "I think I've learned something important," Ethan said slowly, his eyes thoughtful. "I've learned that helping others isn't just about understanding them. It's about seeing them, really seeing them. It's about offering them a space to be heard, to be seen for who they truly are. And sometimes that's enough." Azira studied him for a long moment, as if weighing his words. "That is a powerful lesson, Ethan," she said finally. "The world needs more people like you. People who see others, not just with their eyes, but with their hearts." Ethan felt a surge of warmth at her words. He wasn't perfect, and he knew that. There were still days when the weight of the world felt too much to bear. There were still moments when the pain of others threatened to overwhelm him. But he had learned to carry it, to find strength in the connection he had with those around him. Azira's expression softened. "You've made a difference, Ethan. You may not see it yet, but you've touched more lives than you realize." Ethan looked out across the valley, feeling a quiet sense of peace settle over him. He wasn't the same person he had been when he first encountered Azira. He had changed. He had grown. And though he still had much to learn, he was no longer afraid of the future. "I think I'm ready," he said quietly, more to himself than to Azira. Azira turned to him, her eyes filled with curiosity. "Ready for what?" Ethan took a deep breath, his gaze steady as he met her eyes. "Ready to make my second wish." For a long moment, Azira said nothing. She simply regarded him, as if considering his words. The wind whispered around them, carrying with it the scent of the earth, the promise of something new. Ethan's heart beat a little faster, but he didn't look away. He was certain about this. Azira finally spoke, her voice softer now. "Your first wish was a gift, one that allowed you to understand the world in a way few could. But your second wish, what do you wish for, Ethan?" Ethan's thoughts were clear now. His journey had taught him that he didn't need more power, more wealth, or more fame. He didn't need anything grand or extravagant. What he needed, what the world needed, was something simpler, something more human. He looked at Azira, his heart full of conviction. "I wish," he began, his voice steady, I wish for the strength to help others even when it's hard. I wish to be able to face the darkness of the world and not turn away from it. I want to be able to keep moving forward, even when the pain is too much. I want the strength to be a light in the dark places. Azira's eyes softened, and she stepped closer to him. There was no judgment in her gaze, only understanding. She had seen many beings throughout her long existence, and she had never met anyone quite like Ethan. His wish wasn't for power, wasn't for glory. It was for something far more valuable, the ability to endure, to persevere, and to make a difference in a world that could often feel so cruel and cold. You have already taken the first step, Ethan, Azira said gently. You've shown that strength is not about power. It's about resilience, about compassion, about choosing to keep going when it would be easier to stop. Your wish, it is not a simple one, but it is a worthy one. The air around them shimmered as Azira raised her hands, a soft light enveloping Ethan. The light didn't feel overwhelming or strange. It felt familiar, like the warmth of the sun on a cool day. As the light faded, Ethan felt a subtle shift within himself. It was as though a new strength had settled into his bones, a quiet resolve that would carry him through the hardest times. He smiled at Azira, his heart lighter than it had been in days. Thank you, he said quietly. Azira smiled back, her eyes filled with pride. It is you who have made this wish come true, Ethan. You already possess the strength you seek. Now you must learn to trust it. Ethan nodded, feeling a sense of peace he had never known before. The journey ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, hardships, and moments when the weight of the world seemed too much to bear. But he knew now that he could face them. He could carry the pain of the world without letting it destroy him. And with Azira by his side, he knew he was not alone. As they stood together looking out at the horizon, Ethan felt a sense of hope rise within him. He was ready for whatever came next. He had the strength to help, the resilience to endure, and the heart to make a difference. The world was waiting, and he was ready to meet it head on.